It is November 16th, 2023. We are in Ellsworth, Kansas, and I am with Vernon Rieman. Hi, Vernon.
Hi.
And you were in World War II.
Just barely.
Just barely. Well, let's go back a little bit. Can you tell me where you were born?
I was born 5 miles north of Claflin, Kansas in 1926.
And your birth date is?
8/3/26.
Okay, so you are 97. Did you go to school in Claflin?
I had 8 grades in the country and then went to Claflin for 4 grades for high school.
What year did you graduate?
1944. May the 22nd, I believe.
Wow. Okay. And what did your parents do?
Farmed wheat, oats, that type of thing. Milo was just becoming popular at that time.
Yeah. Brothers and sisters?
I had an older sister. I was a baby of the family.
Okay.
2 older brothers.
So you graduated in 44 and the war was going.
Yes,
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
both.
Okay. Have to explain that.
All right. I had an older brother who was in the service at the time. He went in the day after Christmas of 41, spent 3.5 years in the Southwest Pacific, and as a result, I had a deferment because I was the only left one on the farm. And in the last half of 45, I can't tell you the dates, but the government froze all enlistments for a short time. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Well, they didn't allow any enlistments because everybody was going to the Navy. They couldn't get any dog faces on the infantry. So I had a year's deferment. Then my older brother came home.
Oh.
I could just see I was no longer going to have a deferment. And as a result, I went to the draft board and I said, draft me. He said, are you crazy? And I said, no, but the minute I start something or get married, boom, I'm drafted. I can see it over my head, let's get it over with. So I was drafted. And if you see any serial numbers that start with a 37, that's a draftee.
Okay.
I was sent to California to Camp Roberts for basic training, assigned to a transportation battalion, and then I got appendix.
What branch of the service?
Army.
Army. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was assigned to a transportation battalion because, according to my interviews, I gathered that they knew I could drive trucks and whatever. Well, I wound up with appendicitis, had an operation at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wound up in the infantry as a grunt.
Oh my goodness.
So, I was just an old plain dog face. I got my basic training over with. I was sent to Fort Ord, where I printed dog tags. At that time, they were made of steel, stainless steel, in fact, and I was there until some bright guy come along and said, if you're a draftee and have 6 months or more of active service, you can be discharged and re-enlist in the regular Army and have a definite discharge date. I grabbed it.
Yeah.
That called for a transfer to a different post. 30 days off to visit Mom and Dad, and I wound up at Camp Hood, Texas. It was the 2nd Armored Battalion.
Okay.
I was given a brief course in journalism and become the media expert
Oh.
for the 82nd Armored for a short time. Well, I couldn't put up with the scorpions and spiders and copperheads and rattlesnakes, and I transferred to parachute infantry.
Oh. So in Texas, that's where all those.
Camp Roberts
Okay.
was at Paso Robles, Texas, California.
Okay.
Camp Hood was at Killeen, Texas, which is now a very prominent communication center. And I wound up at Fort Benning. And when my jump school was over with, they placed me as a battalion clerk for headquarters and headquarters company of the 82nd Parachute Infantry, but they were based at Fort Bragg, and I was detached service at Fort Benning. I never saw Fort Bragg.
But you still got to do the parachute? Yeah.
Well, you make 5 to be qualified.
Okay.
At that time, we packed our own chutes.
So you did make the 5 jumps?
Oh, yes. I'm still alive.
Well, that's great.
Of course, you realize that we had a reserve that someone else packed.
A second, in case the first one didn't open. So what was it like the first time you jumped?
Over before you realized it.
Really? Was it a little nervous to do that, to step out of the plane?
Naturally. But we were told politely but directly that if you don't jump, I'll push you.
Oh.
The only thing I have to brag about is a brochure that I've dragged with me ever since.
Oh. Awesome. Oh, I would like to take a photo of this. And
Well, do
I'll
as you
put-
please.
I will do that when we get done with the interview.
I think there's a loose page in there of
Yeah.
the city of Ellsworth.
Yeah. So you made 5 jumps, and then you became a clerk.
I became clerk for headquarters and headquarters company of the 501 Parachute Infantry Battalion.
Okay, so what kind of things did you do as clerk?
Well, posted a roster every morning when the roll call was called, and granted passes, as I might call them. I guess that's what they were called at that time, but for GIs to go into town on weekends and such like as that. But basically, tell visitors where to find their son or wherever, and keep that many records, it seemed like.
Oh boy, I bet there was a lot of paperwork that went in
There
and out.
was. I was busy.
Oh yeah. And so you stayed in the barracks right there in camp?
Yes, we had what were called quartels, which was a building comprised of basically 2 horseshoes opposing each other with a parade ground in the center. And that was where we had reveille and that type of thing, and inspection, one thing and another. They were 3.5 stories. Basement was semi-basement. And then that was supply and equipment, so forth. The next floor was mess hall, basically. Then the third floor was all barracks, and the subfloor above was, I call them cubby holes, 2-room barracks for the non-coms,
What's a non-com?
non-commissioned officer.
Oh, okay. So did you get called out for inspection daily or just randomly?
I was not called out at all, basically speaking, because
Of-
all I did was receive reports from the company commanders.
So you
all-
were you
all
didn't have to
present
do
or
that.
accounted for,
Okay.
and recorded such.
Okay. So you began. When did you go into the service? Do you remember the year?
And I entered the service.
Uh-huh.
The last part of July or August, I'm not sure which. Dates,
You know what year it was? Was it
excuse me,
what year was it? 44 or
45.
45?
I graduated high school in 44.
That's yeah. And then you had to wait your brother to come home.
Yeah.
And then how long were you in the service? Do you remember when you got out?
22 months and 15 days.
Ooh.
Because when I re-enlisted in Fort Ord for 1 year, I had a 4-week furlough to go visit the folks, and then was assigned at 2nd Armored in Killeen, Texas.
Okay. So when I want to go back to when you were in basic training, can you describe what a regular day was in basic training? What did you guys do?
Up at 4, reveille. I can't remember the hour anymore. It's been about 75 years ago.
Yeah.
Chow. Well, first roll call at reveille, then chow, and then we got the assignment for the day. Some days it was a march for an hour, 10-minute break, march for another hour, 10-minute break, repeat the process back to camp.
That's a lot of marching.
Basically, that's all that a GI does in the infantry.
Did you have to do like calisthenics or?
Oh, yes. Like I told you before, I was assigned to a transportation battalion, but when I come down with appendicitis in an operation, I wound up in straight infantry.
Which was a little different than what you were thinking.
Well, yes, but I had it in my mind, I want to get this over with. And I didn't know there was going to be any re-enlistment or anything like that. Let's just get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Let me see what else I want to ask you. Did you meet some people that you became buddies with while you were in the service?
Not really. We had 12 weeks there, but I started out, like I said, in transportation. I wound up in the hospital, recovery, as they called it, rehab, and then back to a different company. And I was kind of an odd boy out, I guess you want to call it.
You moved around a lot and...
I didn't play cards, and that narrowed it down completely. Payday, everybody had the card decks out. I got a book and read it. I don't play cards.
Yeah. Do you still like to read?
But
Do you still read? Oh, yeah, you do. All right.
I'm going to have to quit. My eyesight is fading.
Yeah. Well, you can get a book on tape or CD so you could
Well,
listen.
I think I need an optometrist appointment. I have glasses, but I didn't wear glasses until I was 92.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. Did you ever have a chance to meet General Eisenhower?
No, I rode his plane one time
Oh, you did?
when I was discharged from the service. And I think today, if you have orders to travel or terminal leave, as it's called, that you can go home and mail your discharge to you 2 weeks later, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I decided, well, let's backtrack a little bit. I dated a girl in Texas for a short time, went to a couple movies and what have you. And she and her folks moved to Klamath Falls, Oregon to join her sister that had already moved there. So I decided I'd just go see the lady. You can ride a GI plane if you have your orders and are in uniform, free. You walk into the pilot's lounge and there's a bulletin board. And you write your name on there and you write going, well, from Fort Benning, either said north or west.
Yeah.
And I wrote west. Well, I caught 2 or 3 different planes and wound up in Los Angeles. And Eisenhower had gotten off the plane to tour some camps. And I got on board that plane to go to San Francisco.
Oh.
Compliments of Dwight Eisenhower.
Neat. That's awesome.
Then I hitchhiked from Eugene, Oregon back to Klamath Falls, visited over the weekend, bought the lady a Wayne King album because for feeding me a meal or two and visiting.
Mm-hmm.
Hitchhiked back to San Francisco to Hamilton Field and caught GI planes back to Oklahoma City.
Wow. So hitchhiking was that pretty common?
Nobody passed up a GI in uniform.
Oh, I bet not. I bet
No
not.
one.
Yeah.
I got on the highway at 7 o'clock in the morning in Oklahoma. I was in Claflin at 5 o'clock that evening, all compliments of people picking me up on the side of the road.
That's great.
I'll never forget those people.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Do you feel like the military affected your life? Being in the military affect your life?
Not really. I'd already learned to take orders. Dad was a very good man, but when he said something, he meant it. And he was not rough to us kids by any means, but he expected the chores to be done, and he expected us to do it cheerfully. Mm-hmm. And I had no problem. In fact, I went in with a reasonably short haircut and never had a GI haircut. The 22 months that I was in the service, I never got a GI haircut.
So I'm guessing from the dates that the war was over while you were in.
Well, the Germans had already surrendered,
Right.
but the Japs had not.
Right.
That's why I was classified as a World War II veteran, because they hadn't given up.
Right. And then were you still serving when they finally dropped the bombs and they surrendered?
I don't know how many days, but
You were still in the service?
yes.
Okay. Was that a pretty happy time for everyone?
Well, yes, because I don't remember if I was at Fort Ord or if I was already at Camp Hood, Texas when that was done. It's been too long ago.
Okay, so then when you got out of the service, you went back to Claflin?
Yes, I went back to farming, and then I got a job with co-op on the oil patch, chopping weeds around the leases and such like as that. and I'm not going to name any names, but a good friend of mine, or I thought he was. I worked during the winter when the grass was not growing, and come spring, I got fired. And I said, why did I get fired? What did I do? And the man says, why, these two gentlemen, quote, I won't give their names, but they worked here until it got cold, and then they went to Claflin to work in the flour mills while it was warm. Now they want their jobs back because they have seniority. And an old farm boy didn't know how he was being treated.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that old dude who took me off the payroll because he had friends.
Yeah. And so then did you stay in Claflin? That's where you lived?
No, I got a job driving truck in Great Bend for Williams Trucking Company. I rented a room in a house, 2-story house in Great Bend, and drove trucks wherever I was needed or wherever I was trucking needed to move something. Yeah. Basically, it was oil field equipment. Oh. We did have one request to move in a big furnace of some kind, and the truck pusher says, we are not working in that category. We're working with hard steel that we can't damage too badly.
And then, did you get married? Did you have a family?
Well, I had an older brother, Harold, that was a farmer, but as a sideline, as a hobby, he dug ponds and built terraces and etc. So I worked for him one summer, and we dug ponds and built terraces, and then I loved to shoot, and I had a single-shot .22 Hornet, which you've never heard of, and I went into a hardware store in Washington, Lewis Hardware, operated by Virginia Lewis Wiles, actually. She had been married and her husband passed away. And I asked for a box of ammunition for a .22 Hornet. Well, if you can find it, I'll sell it to you. My husband took care of the sporting goods, and how did I want to put this? I took care of the upstairs, which was hardware, china, at bolts, nuts, and whatever. So I went back to my brother's place that night, and I got to thinking, I knew just about everything there is to know about shooting and hunting. I went back and got me a job. I worked 2 years at Lewis Hardware in Washington, Kansas. I dated a school teacher that taught at school in Holyrood. And May the 26th of 51, we got married.
Nice. Would you have any message that you'd like to leave for the young people about World War II? Or just a message in general?
Yes. The job I did was not heroic or anything of the sort, but somebody had to do it. Do it the best you can.
You bet. It all worked together for us to be on the winning side of the war. It was, yes. Every job was important.
If it hadn't have been for that atomic bomb, we would be speaking Japanese today.
Good chance. Good chance. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with me today?
I enjoyed our armed services. I met a lot of people that I enjoyed meeting, and I felt like I did my share.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. Well, thank you for talking with us today, and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.